Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 42. To follow up on last week's Carol Danvers episode, this week we're going to do another Captain Marvel, and it's Monica Rambeau.
All right, looking forward to it.
Before we get started, and this is something that we forgot to mention, last week was actually the 1-year anniversary of us starting this podcast. Our very first episode on Eddie Brock was released. Technically, it was Tuesday night, because I didn't know how to schedule it in advance to drop on Wednesday morning, but I scheduled it for March 6, 2018. Last week was the 1-year anniversary of that show, so thank you so much to all of our family, friends, and supporters. It's been an amazing year. Doc and I are so incredibly grateful for all the support that we have received from the podcasting community, from the mental health community, from the comic books community. And we've made so many friends and had a lot of fun over the last year doing this. And I know that we are just really scratching the surface of, I think, what the show is capable of. And we're looking forward to what year 2 can bring us.
Yep, you have aged us rapidly, but that means that we have more wisdom.
I don't think that came across the way you meant it.
Oh, okay. Then thanks.
In all sincerity, though, thank you to all of our patrons, to all of the family and friends that listen to us, particularly as we recorded and re-recorded and re-recorded the first episode. I think we did about 3 times before we reached the point that we were comfortable in figuring out, and yet still listening back on it, there are so many things that we would do differently.
Yeah. The one thing about any pursuit, be it business or entertainment, that we have to keep in mind is you're not doing it right if you're not ashamed of your first iteration. You should be getting better every time.
Absolutely. I don't know that you want to be ashamed of it, but you just go, oh, you know, I could do this differently, or I could do that differently. You can certainly be proud of what you initially accomplished. And I think looking back on the Eddie Brock episode, we are both very proud of it. But if you listen to that episode, there's a lot good there, but I think we've really refined the show over the last year, and we've gotten a lot better, certainly with respect to the skits and some of the analysis. We don't go nearly as in depth on the character backgrounds, and I think that allows for a little more time in some of the analysis and discussion when it comes to the issues. So if you haven't listened to it yet, please go back and check out our very first episode, and then listen to this one and see. Certainly, at least from an audio quality standpoint, there's a major difference because we have a mixing board and 2 much better microphones now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much that we should be thankful for with the effort that I know you've put into this and the effort that I pretend to put into this. I'm kidding. No, I take this very seriously. I know that there are a lot of people sometimes that are reaching out for help and don't know how to do it. If you have to latch on to a comic book character that you seem to either enjoy or you think that there's a lot of you in them and we happen to discuss them, this might be your opportunity to do something for yourself. Obviously, we are not trying to be treatment-minded for our listeners. We just want to give some helpful hints and education. But having said that, if this spurs you to be a better person, then I think we've done our job.
And if this spurs you to be a better person, then I will gladly pat myself on the back and take full credit for it.
All right.
Now, and it's just, you know, looking back, I mean, just some of the highlights from the last year is just, like I said, all of the new equipment that we got. Thank you, Brian, for your support of the show. We certainly appreciate that. I think one of the highlights has to be the crossover episode that we did with Popcorn Psychology and covering the Incredible Hulk. They came on our show. We went on theirs. So Hannah, Brittany, and Ben, we're looking forward to doing it again. And just some of the interactions that we've had, particularly on Twitter with the other podcasts. I was the guest on the Into the Night Moon Knight podcast. We got a lot of things in store that we're planning for season 2 or year 2. I suppose we're technically in season 2 at this point.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to things in year 2. And one of the things that we're looking forward to is our first ever full guest voice on one of our skits. I know we technically had the collabo session with Popcorn Psych, but this is completely different. This is going to be the first skit this episode in which I take no part in it whatsoever. And very much looking forward to that. So tying into that, I want to give our shout out podcast recommendation of the week to the Lolita Gentry project, which is run by Jeanne, who's going to be doing our guest voice this episode. And you can check all of that out at lolitajentry.com. It's a podcast. It's like a mixed media experience going over a number of different things. Major thank you to Jeanne. You can follow her individually at P31 Mission on Twitter. And you can also, like I said, check out Lolita Gentry Project on Twitter and all the various social media forms. So we're very grateful to Jeanne, who's one of our biggest fans and supporters, and someone that, again, we would not have interacted with were it not for this podcast.
Yep, absolutely grateful for it. And I'm glad that we were able to get a decent actor to do something like this, as opposed to me having to deal with Anthony.
Yeah, I wasn't touching this. Again, nope. Not even trying to sound like a black woman. Not even going to try it. So I know my lane and I am staying right in the middle of it. Not even going to go for it. So as we said, last week we did Carol Danvers, the Captain Marvel. Side note, the Captain Marvel movie was awesome. And the fanboys can suck it. Ouch. I'm just talking about all the little whiny crybabies that were like, it's about Brie Larson doesn't want me to see this movie. I'm going to be upset. Meh. Everything about men.
Oh, boy. Well, I'll just say that if you had concerns about that affecting the movie itself, it really doesn't. Do yourself a service, keep your mind open, and enjoy a good cinematic experience. Yeah.
Also, just again, the 90s, it was my era. It was like going back to my glory days, like mid 90s. That was.
You sound like our Ra's al Ghul episode where I point out nostalgia bias being an incredibly powerful experience.
Oh, dude, I have such nostalgia bias for the 90s. I mean, come on. It had seriously, some of the best music. I have made the argument repeatedly that the era of music between 1991 and 1997 was like some of the most musically diverse eras of music ever. Just from pop to hip hop. We saw the rise of country and alternative grunge. I was all about the flannel back in the early 90s with my Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, rest in peace, Kurt Cobain. And then the hip hop in that era was just absolutely amazing. You had so many different. Hip hop was not just this singular monolithic entity that it was. You had the Afrocentric stuff. You had East Coast. You had West Coast. You had, the party stuff. You had some really underground stuff like Wu-Tang, which was just starting out, the really raw, gritty stuff. I could go off on 90s hip hop for an extended period of time. That's one of my favorite genres.
Clearly you can. And I really feel like if Ra's al Ghul were here right now and were born maybe a decade or two ago, he would sound just like you coming out of a Lazarus pit. I swear.
Probably. But that's not germane to the episode at hand. So let's cover Monica Rambeau. So she was created by Roger Stern and John Romita Jr. in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16 in October of 1982. She was a lieutenant in the New Orleans Police Department. She tried helping out an old friend of her grandfather's who wanted to prevent the creation of a dangerous weapon, but in the process of destroying it, she was exposed to extra-dimensional energy, which gave her the power to convert her body to any form of energy. One of the men who witnessed the explosion said, "The captain is a marvel," so the media that overheard this dubbed her Captain Marvel, and she kept the name to honor Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, who had recently died. And the first costume that she had was created from an old Mardi Gras costume. Then her grandfather's friend created a costume for her out of unstable molecules. It's always unstable molecules.
Yeah, I mean, how many people have to suffer these horrible accidents and get all of these powers? I always wondered about that, and I know they had disclaimers, but you would think the number would be greater for kids who tried dangerous stuff just to see if they could get superpowers.
Well, one would hope that their parents talked them out of it, but I suppose there's a Darwin Award for everyone, or the potential for a Darwin Award for everyone. Then she joins the Avengers to learn how to gain control over her powers, and she ends up becoming the leader of the team in 1987. She then loses all of her powers after overexerting herself battling Marina, the wife of Namor the Submariner. So she retires briefly from superhero duties until she regains her strength and her powers. When Mar-Vell, the son of Mar-Vell, becomes a superhero in his own right, he decides to honor his father's legacy and calls himself Captain Mar-Vell. So he and Monica get into a little bit of an argument. So then she changes her name to Photon. She says, you know what? It was your dad. I'm going to honor that. I have no direct connection to Captain Mar-Vell. You can call yourself Captain Mar-Vell. I'll call myself Photon. So she rejoins the Avengers and she gets involved in some mostly intergalactic adventures. And then Mar-Vell decides that he wants to forge his own path and get away from his father's identity. So he begins calling himself Photon. Which, like, come on, man, really? She gave you the name already once. She gave you your father's name, and now it just seems like you're going right after her. Like, you want to call yourself after your father's name, that's totally okay. And I don't think anybody's going to take fault with that. But now you decide you want to come up with your own identity, and you choose one that already exists.
Okay, I'm going to come up with an innocent version of this. I know that when I was in school as a little kid, sometimes we would get assignments for a creative project, and the teacher would give an example. And I always hated that because once the teacher gave the example, all I could think of was the example as the project that I should do. And that was really annoying. So he heard the name Captain Mar-Vell. Okay, that's his dad. Get it. Photon was the only other name he could think of because that was the last person associated with the name Captain Mar-Vell. So it's kind of hard to just say, I'm going to come up with my own name when that's all you could think about. It's that old saying, whatever you do, don't think of white elephants. Now you're thinking of white elephants.
No, I'm actually thinking of J. Edgar Hoover.
Wow.
Why was that why was that not a major plot hole in the Ghostbusters movie? I don't understand.
Hey, you got me, man. You got me. And by the way, stop thinking of white elephants. I'm talking to the audience now. It's okay.
Fair enough.
Baby shark, do 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 do. Yeah, anybody that's a parent, I just destroyed your commute or your walk, whenever you're listening to. Now that's stuck in your head. I did that on purpose.
They were just going to London. Baby shark, do. So then, once Mar-Vell decides to call himself Photon, Monica once again has to change her name. This time she changes it to Pulsar. So then she leads the Next Wave team against Hate, which I love. Next Wave. It's Warren Allison, Stuart Immonen, 12 issues. Please go read it. Don't look for much in the way of plot. That's kind of the hook of the book. I didn't mean to rhyme it there, I swear. But that's the point, is that Next Wave is about things exploding and characters being turned up to 11. It is one of the most fun reads I've ever had. It's an amazing read. So she changes her name to Spectrum, and she led a mighty Avengers team after the Infinity event, and she tried to destroy the Ultimate Universe to prevent it from destroying Earth 616, but Ultimate Reed Richards was able to stop her.
Yeah, never get in the way of Ultimate Reed Richards. If you want to read that run, oh my goodness, he is a villain.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Just straight up dick. Even more so than Scott.
Oh, I thought we were over it.
We've gone like 5 or 6 episodes without mentioning the fact that Scott is a dick. So I feel like I had to bring it back. Especially, listen, last week's episode was so heavy and so deep. I feel like we need to lighten this up just a little bit.
I agree.
You know, we need some sweet after the savory.
Yeah.
So moving on to the issues. Now, again, we're theming these Carol and Monica back to back. Side note, I really hope that at some point Monica grows up in the MCU, or that we get to see like modern Monica, because we saw her in the 90s in the film. And I'm really hoping that we get to see some stuff for Monica in the current era. So Monica starts off as a legacy character, even though she has no connection to the original. So Monica Rambeau was the second Captain Mar-Vell in the print history, but unlike Mar-Vell or even Carol, they took the name as a way to honor Mar-Vell. Monica ends up with the name because one of the guys that was on the rig as it was exploding, or as she was destroying the machine and absorbing the energy, said like, the captain is a Mar-Vell, but in French, I believe it was, probably like the Creole speak of New Orleans. So the media heard this and goes, oh, Captain Marvel. And the Thing even kind of confronts her about it. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess Marv's not really using it now. And there's probably another Thing out there somewhere. So like, I guess sort of hanging a lampshade on the notion that legacy characters can change names. But it's interesting in a way that we don't often see legacy characters take on a name with no connection to the original character. But as we discussed last week with Carol, carrying on a legacy character name can have its own baggage. So, Doc, I don't know if you want to address that a little bit.
Sure. And I apologize ahead of time for the people that don't care about sports. You're about to get more sports analogies. So there may have been this basketball player, Michael Jordan, I believe was his name. And Anthony is just giving me the ultimate look right now. But I can't just make the assumption that everyone knows who Michael Jordan is. So arguably greatest NBA basketball player of all time. Why would I bring him up? Because he is well known, and how could I compare that to Monica Rambeau?
He was well known as a golfer and a baseball player, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Hang out with Bugs Bunny.
Space Jam.
Come on and play, and welcome to the jam.
The reason I bring him up is because after he retired, and even while he was playing, actually, there were a couple of people that would come along in the college basketball scene, or they'd be rookies or young players in the NBA. And the second that they showed a certain style or they had certain abilities, people would start comparing them to Michael Jordan. And there's one particular player by the name of Harold Miner. If we're going to talk about the 90s, we might as well go all 90s, right? He had the nickname Baby Jordan. I am not making that up. So this is a person that was not related to Michael Jordan, that may or may not have ever met him before playing in the NBA. And Michael Jordan actually took it as a slight and tried to play harder against him during those games because of that nickname. And this player won slam dunk contests like Michael Jordan and whatnot, but he never lived up to that expectation. And partly their speculation, it was because of the pressure. So Monica is in a situation where I'm not sure I would envy that, because I mentioned with Carol that there's a blueprint that Mar-Vell was able to do, but that was a blueprint for someone with his type of abilities, and Monica certainly is powerful, but she doesn't come from that exact same area. She knows and is aware of how great this person is, but the pressure, instead of being a motivating factor, is much more of a headwind. She has to fight against the idea that other people, now that this has been foisted upon her, are going to have the same level of expectations. She didn't have to have any of the same goals. She didn't have to have the same personality. She didn't have to have the same style. So it goes above and beyond what most people would expect. And then to just have that thrown because of a coincidence? That sounds unfair to me. That can create a sense of injustice. And when a person has that, they're going to have emotional responses. Often, it can be a sense of anger. It can be a sense of depression. I'll give her a lot of credit because she seemed to take it in stride. She didn't try to be exactly like any other Captain Marvel. She did her own thing, and if people felt it necessary to continue with that moniker, then so be it. So I'm not so sure it was as much an issue for her as it was for the people around her. Is there an echo in here? I thought I said something similar with Carol Danvers.
You know, for a split second, I thought you were actually addressing the possibility of an echo in the room, and I was going to say, I thought we took care of a lot of those things.
So maybe she does deserve the moniker of Captain Marvel, if that's the way they both handle it. And I wonder, on top of that, is that something related to a similarity in terms of gender? I'm raising that as a legitimate question. I don't have an answer one way or the other, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wonder if there's an added layer to this if you included cultural or racial concerns. I'm saying that as a possibility. I'm not saying that it has to be that way. But once again, when you add these things together, you may end up with a person that has a chip on their shoulder. And for someone that is expected to lead a group or take more responsibility for things, that can have some interesting results, to say the least. So I don't really envy Monica for getting that thrown upon her as soon as something random happened. But once it was there, I think she did pretty well.
Oh, I think she did amazingly, all things considered. So the next thing that we see her deal with, this is particularly in the late 80s, is after she loses and then recovers her powers, she has some phobias about using her powers, particularly as they relate to underwater, because the way that she overexerted herself was that she spread herself thin to turn into many lightning bolts so that she could strike this giant Leviathan. And as a result, it nearly killed her. So coming back from that, when she eventually did regain her strength and her powers, she had a lot of concerns about overexerting herself. And that's something that we've discussed on occasion, loss or regaining powers. I know we talked beforehand when we were setting this up. It's not PTSD. We'll call it a phobia. So, Doc, I don't know if you want to address that.
Right. The reason why I went with phobia aside from PTSD is because, well, first of all, I wanted to vary it for my own sanity. And second of all, phobias are very specific and they may or may not stem from direct experience. With Monica, it was very clear that it was the water itself, and it had a decent reason. She knew that as energy, depending on how she was conveying it, it could interact with water and cause disastrous results. And we're not talking about someone that's being neurotic, where they're creating a situation in their own mind that's above and beyond the reality that they're experiencing. Science tells us don't have live wires hanging out in the water. There's pretty clear reasons for that. So when she gets into a situation where that's the only way she can get the result that she's looking for, she's taking knowledge that what I didn't want to happen in the first place is about to happen, and it's going to lead to a result that, although it may help save a lot of people, I'm going to have a direct negative consequence to myself. That's the definition of sacrifice. And you're lying to yourself if you say that I want to make sure I sacrifice every day. We say that as a cliche, but to actually say I'm going to potentially end my life knowingly ahead of time with a plan because it's going to benefit the world at large, that's something that's difficult to comprehend. So she was able to do that in one particular time, and it almost killed her. And she had to expend a lot of effort. So the honest question that she has to answer is, am I really willing to do that again? That almost sounds like a Monopoly, like get out of jail free card. Like you get one. You're not going to get multiple of those. So there's a very real fear that if she gets put in that same spot, what's the final result going to be? And what's dangerous about this is she's right from a logical standpoint. And yet, because of the position that she's put in as a hero, if it came down to that, she may have to make the exact same decision. I don't know what the right answer to this is because I've never been in that particular situation. But I can say that someone who, let's say, is a firefighter and they were in a situation where previously they've gone into burning buildings. I'm not saying that they should have done something different because you knew you were going to have to do that as a firefighter. I am going to say, though, that the general nature of what a firefighter does doesn't have to include certain events. So let's say the person has a specific fear of dogs. You go into a burning building, and it just so happens the person has a Rottweiler. What on earth are you supposed to do? This is your job. You didn't sign up for this extra thing. And it paralyzes you to the point where you say, I can't do this. But they know for a fact that there are people that need saving. You now have to confront the one thing that you did not ever want to experience in your life. And it's unfortunate because it may have been from a previous time where you were bitten. So this is not as outlandish as it seems. The idea that you have to confront fears head on is something that many of us don't have to do. At least not like this. Not this visceral. We can get the emotional and ideological situations, public speaking maybe, but not on the same level. And not this immediate matters of life and death. So kudos once again to Monica for surviving, but it's no surprise, in my opinion, that she would be totally drained.
Literally and figuratively.
Uh-huh.
So the last thing I want to talk about, and this is not something that we do often with respect to the issues that we tend to focus in on a particular run, particularly one that is whose continuity in canon is disputed. But in Next Wave, one of Monica's biggest things is that she's constantly talking about when I led the Avengers, when I was in charge of the Avengers. Now, I know it was done for comedic effect because literally everything in Next Wave was done for comedic effect. But it's the notion that she was hanging on to that leadership when she was in charge of the Avengers. And she uses that to try and either get her team to listen to her or to inspire them or to just say, hey, you should listen to me because I know what the hell I'm talking about. And it doesn't really go over well. I would say it goes over about as well as a fart in church. So if you can talk about the fact that she's reliving the glory days or hanging on to that, again, I know it's for comedic effect, but it was a pervasive thing throughout the run. So if you want to get into that a little bit.
One of the best examples I can think of that makes this relatable to everyone else is if you have to create a resume for yourself, let's say you're looking for a job or just updating it for your file, how do you present that on paper? Do you simply leave it as factual? This is what my educational experience is. These are the jobs I've had. This is the period of time that all those things happen. Or do you, let's just say, add some flair? Woo! Thank you. I really set that one up, man. Okay, anyway, I'm saying
I was styling and profiling for this company. I was riding limousines and jet flying. Woo!
Ironically, that's not far off than what I was going to say. I was going to point out that you make your accomplishments sound as great as they possibly can, even if they were more on the mundane side, because we naturally want to present the best light to people that are going to be making major decisions about hiring us, or if we're trying out for something and we know we have to put our best foot forward. You don't want to have everything revealed about the struggles that you went through unless you want to make something sound dramatic and how you overcame it. You just want them to know that you are awesome, and that's why you should be picked.
Well, that's the Miz, not Flair.
I really hope we have enough people that get these wrestling references, because even people that know Flair may not know the Miz.
Well, if they watch USA, he's got the show.
That's true. That's true of all the people. And if you liked MTV, if we're going to, once again, going back. retro.
Yeah.
Oh,
going
man.
really retro 90s here.
Mike Mizanin, that's who the Miz was. And he basically predicted that's what his character was going to be. Anywho.
Because I'm the Miz and I'm awesome. Sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. I brought it up myself.
Oh, good, because I'm not really sorry.
And that gets back to the resume point. There's a certain expectation that people are always looking to put their best light forward, and it's always up to the person hiring the staff to determine what's just for the moment and what is genuine and can be sustained in a work environment. So this is unique because Monica is more like a CEO putting his resume out in public and it's online. You can research everything that they've done, and people already knew that. So you just saying it again to people that are going to be your subordinates is not exactly uplifting. It's rubbing it in. Or at least potentially that's the way they could take it. Other people can take it as a threat. I'm on top of the mountain and I'm going to rain an avalanche down on you. I'm going to make your life a living hell. Whatever. It could also be something that turns people off and make them indifferent. Yeah, you did that for some other company, but what does that have to do with us? You know nothing about what we do. So under all of those circumstances, you have these potential responses, but because you just threw that out there as the hammer, they don't have to respect that one bit, and you have to figure out why. So now it's not their job to acquiesce to you. It's your job to find out what their individual motivations are. So good luck, Monica. I'm pretty sure you're going to have your work cut out for you if you just keep saying that you're the leader of the Avengers.
But I wonder if she could get them to buy into her abilities as a leader if she tells them that she would cross the ocean for them. She would go and bring them the moon.
Oh, my goodness.
She could be their hero, their strength, everything they need.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like we should have a bell that we ding every time we make these random references. Then again, it would just be, hi, I'm Anthony Sickle, ding, and I'm Dr. Ding, ding, ding. We just wouldn't stop.
Yeah. So moving into treatment in universe, I want to talk about what Monica can do to help become a better version of herself. Because much like Carol last week, there's not a whole lot of issues that Monica has, or at least certainly not anything terrible. It's about making her better than she already is.
I think it's fair to say that when someone has had the experiences that Monica has, she has every right to have her own fears or concerns about certain situations. So if we're talking about the fear that you're going to be placed in the same situation and make a hard choice that might even result in your death, there is such a thing as delegation. I don't mean sending out a lemming or a guinea pig, and why does it always have to be rodents, to their doom to just take the brunt of the force of whatever you're dealing with.
Like a red shirt, Ensign Ricky.
Right. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm saying that planning ahead and having a proper structure so that people are able to do things with positive results, and no one, this is a scary thought now, no one has to be put at the ultimate risk of death all the time. That might be a good thing. You don't have to go with your number one phobia, even though in comics, that's often the recommendation of you got to fear, you just fight through it. And I do believe in that to a certain extent. I think you should lean into things that make you nervous, anxious, and are uncomfortable, because that's how you grow. That's how you learn. I don't think if you're in a situation where things cause you to become completely paralyzed and helpless, that you should immediately do those things as your next step. There is a gradual process that can happen with this. So for Monica, I would say, if you're worried that the next time you turn into an electrical form of energy, that you're going to come in contact with water, then find out who on your team is comfortable with water. Find out ways that you can insulate yourself. And I know there's a psychological way to say that as well, but I do mean like really insulate yourself. Anybody got a suit? Whatever. Maybe you don't have to be electricity near the water. Energy comes in so many forms. Can you turn into sound and create a tsunami? Can you turn into heat and boil it away? Whatever it is. Do you have someone that can think outside the box for you in those moments so that you don't have to come up with those decisions on your own? The idea of delegation in a time of crisis is crucial because she's so powerful, she may think she can do everything at once. She doesn't have to. That's part of what true leadership is. She certainly can identify the powers and abilities of the people around her, but I'm not sure she recognizes how the interplay of all of those people can create a whole greater than the sum of its parts. So that's what I would talk to her about. And hopefully enough of it would resonate that she doesn't get totally shocked in the moment.
And if it happens, don't take it personal. It's just one of them days.
Wrong Monica.
Right. Or is it?
You know,
she could moonlight as a singer. We don't know.
I swear to you, we did not intend to just go on this particular timeline. I don't know what to say, people. This is just happening. I guess I'm helpless to stop it.
Sometimes it's organic. So out of universe, then, this is going to be an interesting one because you've got the legacy characters. You've got the police thing. You have, frankly, and this is something that we really didn't discuss, we have the notion of the fact that she's a black woman in a position of power that carries with it, in this day and age, its own set of issues that shouldn't exist, but we're realistic here. They do. Mm-hmm. And so all of this put together, even outside of the powers, she's got the phobia stuff. It makes for a very compelling and interesting character.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you treat a real Monica Rambeau?
Depending on the circumstances, and that's why I gave that exaggerated firefighter with the fear of dogs thing. It can be any combination of things, but the point is you're in a circumstance where you are in control of a situation, have to make major decisions, and you're going to have parts of it that are not only uncomfortable, but actually scare you. How do you get past that? I mentioned briefly that this can be a gradual process. There's a term for it, systematic desensitization. You find the mildest form of what the phobia is, and you gradually expose the person to various levels of it, to the point where, in theory, they are comfortable with the fear stimulus itself. It may not get to that point. That's actually very textbook, very systematic. You don't have to think too hard as to how that would work. It's the effort and the willingness of the patient to want to do that in the first place. So that's just something you create the timeline and you go session by session. The other things, oh boy, you had to bring them up, didn't you?
Well, I just thought it was important to note. I didn't want to gloss over it or make it seem like we were ignoring it.
No, I understand. I'm being facetious with that. I'm in an interesting situation to deal with this in the sense that I have to make sure, as we discussed in the Black Manta episode, I'm not a monolith. So my experience of being a black person may not be the same as someone else's experience of being a black person. It doesn't carry its own automatic expectations and challenges, et cetera, although there is a potential where there can be similarities. But everyone is their own individual. I have to learn to respect that from the start. Someone dealing with something related to how they are being treated or mistreated or communicated to differently as a female is something else I'll have to take into consideration. And I will say, and I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds with this, that the combination of those two things can be incredibly unique. Once again, not trying to say specifically a black female, but I'm pointing out the combination of gender, culture, and race for any one person can create its own unique experience. And I have to be aware of it. And if I don't understand, I have to take the time to listen. I know this is the part where some people may gloss over a little and check out because, oh my God, Doc is saying the same thing again. Well, guess what? If I'm saying something consistently, it's because I believe in it and because it's been shown to be important. So take it for what you will.
Truisms are truisms for a reason. Cliches are cliches for a reason.
Right. another way to say it, and this might come from Tony Robbins. I don't remember if it was him or someone else, but if one quote unquote expert says something, they might be a quack. They may not know what they're talking about. But when you get multiple people in multiple circumstances saying the same thing that are considered to be experts in their field, you might want to take it into consideration. So in a situation like this, I would need to know, how has your experience impacted your leadership style or your style of communicating with people that need to do a job? If it does at all. Some people say that they're able to isolate that and created their own mechanism on a daily basis of dealing with employees. Some people point out that that's what they naturally do, that their own mannerisms or their own colloquialisms were so interesting to the people that they were talking to that they use it as a motivating factor. If they learn to say something in a certain way, that their crew responds to it well. Some people say that they notice when they bring it up, they'll only bring it up in certain instances, and it changes the direction of the team. In other words, don't let me get my black loud voice out. I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying it because I've been in those situations before. And sometimes you can use it for comedic effect. Sometimes you're using it as a way to grab people's attention. All of it is fair game. And I'm not saying that one way is right over another. But if I'm not aware of it, and if I don't discuss the results of it, then it can actually do damage. Right now, what we're doing, we're in the entertainment and education business. So I need to be aware that I shouldn't use slang terms. I'm making this very real for everybody here, because there is a certain way that I can talk that I don't usually talk that may sound insulting to people. It may sound like I'm mocking other people, but that wouldn't have been the goal. It would have been to get laughs. If I were with a certain group of friends, I know what I can say and have them have difficulty breathing because they're laughing so hard.
Yeah.
And yet, I know I can't do that in an office setting. I know I can't do that even if I were to walk out of this studio right now.
It's code switching.
You got it. And I recognize that people have to do that at varying levels depending on what's going on in their life. So I need to find out how often they're doing it, what circumstances they're doing it, and challenge them if I happen to notice that it may not be the appropriate time. That is an incredibly fine line to walk. And
oh, no doubt.
The idea that I would be doing this with someone in such a position of power, if they have a lot of other responsibilities, I have to be careful about the timing of even bringing it up, because either they're not willing to hear it, or I made the mistake and misinterpreted. So sometimes you got to figure out if you're speaking the same language. And as a therapist, as a psychiatrist, I like to think I get it right, I'll say 80% of the time. And that may sound like a low number. My point is, I'm willing to learn the interpretation of the other 20%, as long as the other person's willing to do the same.
Well, a lot of it is give and take, and especially in the nature of what it is that you do, it really has to be a relationship. And so you have to learn how to speak to the other person. One of the things that I've learned, and I like to do this, I've done this a number of times in the show, is I will equate it to something that I can understand. The way that I speak to my wife is different now than it was when we first started dating, because you're learning about how to address them, what their responses will be to certain things, basically who they are as an individual. And so I think with respect to a therapy session, that idea is ringing true. And you just look like you had a major epiphany.
What am I doing? We have a character from New Orleans that has a phobia of water. Frickin' Katrina, dude.
Oh,
Can you imagine someone that's supposed to be heroic in a circumstance where people around them in neighborhoods that kind of look similar to them, but didn't have everything they needed at a given time? So you have the hierarchy of what's going on with society. You have a tragedy that's happening, a natural disaster, and in addition to that, you have your own cultural background and baggage, but also your responsibility as, let's say, a police officer or firefighter or things like that. In addition to that, you have family members that may or may not be doing things that we consider to be acceptable in terms of gathering supplies or looting. You're telling me that someone like that is immediately going to make all of the quote-unquote right decisions? I'm not so sure. And all of those things are potential to be discussed. How did I miss that? I am actually ashamed of myself.
Don't be ashamed of yourself. It happens. Things get by us.
Yeah.
You miss things. I miss things. It's the nature. We are human. And I think
mean, the freaking Creole, the French culture that was established in that area compared to anywhere else in the U.S. is so unique. And to just gloss over, I can't believe I did this. Man.
It's okay. It's all right. It's all right.
Okay.
Don't beat yourself up. It's okay. There's so much to unpack. We couldn't possibly cover everything, and we were bound to miss something. And that's the nature of this show, and that's the beauty of this show is we can always revisit Monica. And if she gets an appearance in the MCU, we'll do a follow-up episode on her, or we'll tie it in and we'll do like a whole Captain Marvel compendium. We'll cover all of them. The point is, don't beat yourself up too much for forgetting about the Katrina thing. I hadn't thought of it either, so I'm just as much to blame as you are.
Alrighty.
Anyway, so this is all going to lead to the skit, and for the first time ever, I'm going to step aside and let someone else handle the back and forth with Doc. Once again, thank you to Jeanne for her masterful handling and stepping in for this. So we're going to see what happens when Monica Rambeau sits on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Monica. I'm Dr. Issues. I mean, I'm just assuming Monica because I don't know which other name I should try to use.
Monica is fine.
So what seems to be troubling you?
Okay, so I've been leader of several teams, including the Avengers.
So I've heard. That's quite an accomplishment. You should be proud.
Thanks. The problem isn't that I've been the leader. It's that the teams don't always follow me.
Oh. Well, can you give me an example?
Okay. When I was leading Next Wave, my team was a bunch of nobodies. I mean, Elsa listens to no one. Tabby listens to the voices inside her head. And then there's Machine Man was on the team. It's not like I was working with the best of the best, and yet they didn't respect my leadership, my history. I led the Avengers. They should have been lucky I was even willing to work with them, and all I got from them was flack.
I can see the schism already.
Wait, you weren't even there. You didn't know what it was like.
But you put yourself on a pedestal without any of your team members considering you a part of their group. You made yourself an outcast.
I didn't need them to like me. I just needed them to respect me and follow my lead. Okay. They did enough to cooperate with each other, but we could have been so much more effective had they just listened to me.
I agree that you don't have to be liked to be respected, but you do have to be known.
How could they not have known me? I was Photon. I was Captain Marvel. Again, I was the leader of the f***ing Avengers.
And that's wonderful. But having public celebrity has nothing to do with who you are with the people you don't know. They can't relate to you. They're tuning you out without giving you a chance. I'm sorry to say, it's just as much your concern as it is theirs. You might as well be trying to lead them from another dimension.
Funny you should mention that. That's actually where I derive my powers from.
I got it. You can do just about anything. Actually, I just realized, is that what you're asking your team to do all the things that you're capable of?
No, that's preposterous. I know what they can and can't do, and I focus everyone's role on the team around their strengths. That's what makes a good leader. That's what I did when I was leading the Avengers.
Well, this may come as a shock to you, but your appraisal of their strengths and weaknesses may not match their own appraisals. Have you checked with each team member on whether or not they see eye to eye with you on their abilities?
I'll be lucky if I can get 2 sentences out of most of them when I ask a question. Well, except for Aaron. He never shuts up about how he needs beer and hates the fleshy ones.
So you've established that you have a wide mix of personalities, that you somehow have to get on the same page, and you expect your previous laurels to be enough to get them to fall in line. That sounds unlikely.
I don't expect to enter the room and have my team bow to me. I don't have that big of an ego. But I do want them to respect that I've worked my way up to the position of power I've been given and earned them. I feel that's worthy of consideration.
It's a starting point. Do you know what your structure is? Hierarchy of responsibilities, appointments, delegation? All of that has to be laid out as well as your reasoning. I mean, how much of that have you done with these teams?
It depends on the team. Next Wave was fluid because of the nature of how we started. We were hired by Hate to fight the UWMDs, only to find out that Hate was funded by the Beyond Corporation, which used to be a terrorist cell. So we got out of there before the shit hit the fan, and then it all went sideways from there. The Avengers had more structure. There were bylaws, ID cards, the whole nine. So it really varies based on which team you're asking about. Plus, the fact is that we're saving the world. So it makes it hard to beat up bad guys when you're squabbling about parliamentary procedures. No one cares about Robert's rules when you're squaring off with a giant dragon in purple underpants looking to destroy a town.
Leading an organization doesn't have to be an all or nothing process. If you've had success with one style, take the single most applicable technique and bring it to the next iteration. That way others will see quick success and be more likely to buy in. So, no, I don't think ID cards would be necessary, but starting to create a hierarchy about who attacks the head versus who attacks the tail when battling a dragon in a purple underpants, that's pretty helpful.
Luckily, the dragon thing was just one time. Oh, I certainly hope it was just one time. I shudder to think about dealing with that thing again.
But that's just it. You may not be dealing with that dragon again, but there'll be other enemies, other groups of enemies. You don't have to wait for the next problem to arise to have a similar structure ahead of time. Okay, do you train as a group? Do you review mission successes or failures? What do you do?
Again, it depends on the group. Avengers reviewed everything, trained all the time. Next Wave was seat of the pants.
Well, based on your previous experiences, what do you anticipate your next leadership role to be?
I honestly don't know. It kind of makes me wish I was back on the force. At least there I knew where I stood, even if I was being held back unfairly. But we all wore the same uniform and knew what to do.
Yeah, uncertainty can be quite a pain, especially when you're just as uncertain as everyone else. So how do you translate that to your teammates when they feel that way?
Now, I don't want to give them any more reasons to question my judgment and leadership than they already do.
I think you have it backwards. They think you don't acknowledge what they're going through, even though that may be the common bond amongst all of you. If you start with the insecurities and give them the example of how you push through, it would give the opportunity for them to respect you even more.
I never thought of it that way.
I'm not surprised. Your background really didn't allow you to. Like you said, you knew why everyone was acting the way they were from the police force, and you didn't need to get into the details of their goals. That framework was thrown away a long time ago, and it's impressive that you've come so far without it. But you need to confront it before you spread yourself too thin.
Again.
Yeah, I read that in your file.
That was no fun.
So even though your teammates may not have physically gone through the same experience, I'm pretty sure mentally and emotionally they can relate. I may be taking a guess here, but you probably didn't do a debriefing about that, right?
No, I didn't.
Then you have another opportunity. The next time you're dealing with a group, let them know what you overcame and the stress that it put you under. It not only makes you relatable, but it can give them tactics and motivation at the same time without having to reiterate that you led the Avengers.
But I think that's important to note.
I know that's important. It just doesn't have to be the first thing you say.
Point taken.
I think you have a decent framework on what your next step should be when dealing with other superheroes. How about you give me a call when you deem it necessary to get some further feedback?
I will definitely do that. By the way, if the phone starts to get hot when I call, just drop it. Sometimes they overheat, and I don't mean to do it.
So I'll drop it like it's hot?
Never heard that one before. Thanks, Doc.
So would you say she's an angel of yours?
Oh my God.
I had 2 Monica references. I needed to close it out.
Yeah.
Comes in 3s.
That's amazing. Congratulations. I don't have anything to top that.
I feel very proud of myself.
You should.
Once again, thank you so much, Jeanne, for voicing Monica Rambeau. You can follow her on P31 Mission on Twitter, and you can also please check out the Lolita Gentry project, a multimedia experience at lolitajentry.com. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Want to give a thank you to all of our fans and patrons. And please, you can find us on our website at capesonthecouch.live. You can check us out on all of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Capes on the Couch. You can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/capesonthecouch at the $1, $3, $5, and $10 levels. So major shout out and thank you to all of our patrons for continuing to support this show. We are that much closer to reaching our $50 a month goal. And once we do that, we will begin live streaming all of our recording episodes and taking some comments and such from the fans while we record. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode, our back-to-back Captain Marvels. Next week, we cover the monocle, Sir Reginald Hargreaves from the Umbrella Academy, which you can watch now on Netflix. There's a Dark Horse character, so very interesting, sort of a messed up Professor Xavier alien weird type character. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to unpack there. And then John Constantine from Hellblazer in DC Vertigo. And then we're going to take a short break because my son will hopefully be arriving after we record those last 2 episodes and hopefully not before then. Otherwise, we'll be taking the hiatus a little earlier than expected. It's really not up to myself or my wife at this point. It's really now we're operating on his schedule.
Yeah, I have the strange feeling that it's not going to all go according to plan because that's just the way kids are.
Oh, I'm fully aware of that. My wife is fully aware of that. She's easier to deal with rolling with the punches. I am trying to plan for every eventuality, which is making me lose what little of my hair I have left.
Really? So, I didn't notice.
Oh, just go blow it out your ass.
That's the second time you've said that in a relatively short period of time.
So on that note, Doc, anything else you want to add constructively?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that recognizes when we deal with heavy issues, we try and keep things a little lighter from time to time. But no matter what, we want people to have fun, learn, and just be the best person you can.
Truth. So for Doc Issues and Jeanne, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.